News First, Newsline with Faraz Shaukat Ali.
And a very good evening to you. This is Newsline Zoom. Now that my guest this evening, rather very interesting. If I was to read what it says here, he was born in 1974, had very famous parents and grandparents too. He's a Sri Lankan lawyer, politician, and a member of Parliament. He's also the leader of the All Ceylon Tamil Congress, member of the Tamil National People's Front. None other than, of course, Mr. Gajendra Ponnambalam. Very good evening to you and welcome to Newsline Zoom.
Good evening, Faraz. Thank you.
Just straight away to the point, obviously Sri Lanka is going through one of its worst economic crises ever. Certainly, nobody can remember anything quite like it. And in between all this, there is this claim made by various courts to say that although constitutionally and legally correct, Parliament nevertheless does not enjoy the people's mandate anymore. And therefore, there are calls for elections to have a fresh mandate. Do you subscribe to that view?
Absolutely. And it is a position that is actually endorsed even by this present government. Because if you look at the events that took place, the present government in Parliament accepted that the people have withdrawn their mandate given 2 years ago when the former Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa resigned. And then subsequently, the former President Gotabaya Rajapaksa resigned. So they accepted that mandate had been withdrawn. And in fact, also accepted by those resignations that Parliament too no longer holds the confidence of the people. So what you had since that resignation of the appointment of President Wickremesinghe, in my view, does not have any legitimacy. I think the reason why President Wickremesinghe has to rely on the military so much and to try and stifle public protests and generally public advocacy is because he is fully aware that he has no legitimacy. I mean, if you just look at him as and his sort of path into the position of president, he couldn't retain his own seat. He was an appointed member of the UNP. The UNP, for the first time in history, could not win a single electorate. It had to rely on a national list. In the pecking order, if you take the pecking order, actually, Mr. Wickremesinghe probably comes below even our party. So, I mean, ideally, the former president should have considered Mr. Wickremesinghe as one before the last. I think the Athurariya Ratanathera is probably the member of Parliament with the smallest mandate in Parliament, and the second smallest mandate was from the UNP. So even if you look at the pecking order, the then Prime Minister Wickremesinghe should not have been invited. It should have been in a particular order if democracy is to some extent to be sort of respected. But instead he was given the first choice. So from every angle, our view is that the present government, the president in particular, along with Parliament, does not have the support of the people, does not have the support of the masses. They themselves, by their own actions, have admitted that mandate no longer exists, which means that the only right thing to do is to go for an election.
But how does it happen that the least popular man ends up as the executive president of the country?
Well, I mean, I think the only way you can force this present government to actually go for an election is is by more agitation, is by more public agitation, more displeasure being expressed in various ways. I think what is also very important is that we don't act in a way that gives legitimacy. President Wickremesinghe, I think, is starved of legitimacy. He needs it. He's trying to engage the various political actors in parliament and outside to try and counter the lack of legitimacy by showing that people are talking to him. So I think we have to be careful with how we engage with this government. Whilst on the one hand there is a need to in some way tackle the financial crisis, I think it's important that you don't inadvertently legitimize what is essentially a rogue government as far as we are concerned.
But Mr. Ponnambalam, it appears to me that indeed, I think it appears to all of us that Mr. Wickremesinghe and the SLPP are purely using the legal and constitutional circumstance to hang on to power and enjoy whatever they want to enjoy for the next 2.5 years. And surely that isn't good news for the people who are, of course, sovereign.
No, I completely agree with you. I mean, our view has been, so for example, for us, I mean, just to give you an example of how we within our party have thought of tackling the Wickremesinghe government. President Wickremesinghe has invited the Tamil parties and also other parties represented in parliament for negotiations with regards to finding a solution, a constitutional arrangement for the ethnic conflict, a solution to the ethnic conflict. He said it several times. Now, our position is that if we are to go and take part, since he is desperate to have parties such as ourselves in parliament engaging to show that various political actors are in fact engaging with him, even though he was an appointed member from parliament as the president. And nonetheless, all the political actors are engaging with him, and therefore, by extension, he's legitimate. If he wants to show that, and if we are to in fact show that, then we must be sure that this is this sort of invitation is not just simply an exercise of getting us around the table to show that he's legitimate and that we all accept his legitimacy. And there must be a quid pro quo that we know for sure that the political solution part of it will be seriously tackled, right? So unless we have some sort of parameters that are being drawn by the government and telling us, look, since the ethnic conflict is to be solved, we need to seriously consider alternatives to the present unitary structure of the state. We accept that you all are insistent on alternatives. So the talks will be about those alternatives. Unless we have some sort of guarantees that the parameters of negotiations is not going to be another sort of go around the mulberry bush sort of exercise, which ultimately will only lead to some sort of legitimacy being given to him and not finding any solutions to any problems. I don't think we should engage. So that is the position that our party is taking. We have been urging other members representing the Tamil people of the Northeast to take a similar position. We have also been urging other members from the other minorities, the Muslims in the upcountry Tamils, who also have certain issues that need to be addressed constitutionally, to make sure that they strike a balance in this whole exercise. Because at the end of the day, what you don't want to do is for us also to contribute to what is essentially a disenfranchising exercise with regards to the average voter. When the voter is very clear that they have withdrawn a mandate and they want a new mandate, we obviously can't be seen to be contradicting that position if we want to remain credible in the eyes of the people in the future.
But, quite frankly, the minorities, the Tamils, the Muslims, and so on, have been waiting almost like waiting for Godot for a solution to this to the national problem. And now we see and we read that President Wickremesinghe has sort of said he'd like to see a sort of consensus by February. And quite frankly, having waited so many years for this thing, and basically, quite frankly, again, a pack of lies from every successive government who only paid lip service to this problem. Quite frankly, from where I stand, I don't know if I have any confidence at all whether this can be resolved in the time frame that Mr. Wickremesinghe is announcing. Do you have confidence that this can have resolution by February?
No, not at all for us. In fact, it makes it makes all these efforts even more suspicious as far as motive is concerned, and it only tries to sort of reinforce those suspicions, because it seems that those dates are also quite coincidental with regards to possible IMF negotiations and possible agreements on that front. So all of this seems extremely shaky as far as we are concerned, and our sort of our concern is if you take, for example, former President Maithripala Sirisena, who was in Parliament, who had come to Parliament, and in the course of one of his speeches just a few days ago, President Maithripala Sirisena spoke of district development councils. These are sort of ideas that were formulated by the late President Jayawardene in the late 70s and 80s. I think there was a constitutional change in the early 80s where these district development councils were then at that time sort of mooted, rejected by the Tamil people at that time. Right? President Wickremesinghe heard this speech from President Maithripala Sirisena, came running to his seat in Parliament, and basically said that he's willing to consider it. Now, the Tamil political parties are talking of something totally different. Here you have President Maithripala Sirisena out of the blues making this statement, and you have President Wickremesinghe saying that he's prepared to consider it. Now, this is not something that we should take lightly for us, because President Wickremesinghe, when he was about to be appointed Prime Minister, in fact, the day before he was appointed Prime Minister, wanted to meet me. And I met him at his party chairman's house. I think it is Mr. Vajra Abe Gunawardana's house, who happens to be my neighbor down Queen's Road. And when I met him, and when we spoke, Mr. Wickremesinghe brought up the ethnic issue and said that, look, Gajan, we need to find a solution. This cannot be allowed to go on like this. And he said that he was going to be appointed Prime Minister, and that he wants to take this head on. So I said, very well, sir, you know what our position is. We have always said that our view is that a permanent solution can only be found on the basis of a federal solution. We are prepared to give whatever guarantees that the Sinhalese people and the South in general might have with the fears of possible secession. We'll give guarantees that will not happen, constitutional guarantees. So whatever sort of fears that may arise should be addressed, and we will cooperate in that front. But we think that a frank discussion has to take place. He rejected it outright. He rejected that notion outright. And what he said is that he's thinking in terms of committees. And now, with hindsight, it is quite clear that President Wickremesinghe himself had the idea of these district development councils. District committees was was the term he used. He himself had the idea of district development councils. And one must sort of suspect whether President Maithripala Sirisena and President Ranil Wickremesinghe didn't have a chit chat and whether this whole notion of district development councils being brought up into this into the radar was a drama, right? So I mean, from our point of view, when you have just invited the Tamil parties, when the Tamil parties are the ones who should actually say what we think should be considered as a possible solution, before those negotiations can even begin, to have President Maithripala Sirisena to say something about district development councils which are rejected way back in the 80s. And President Wickremesinghe then says that he's prepared to consider that. I mean, it all looks extremely suspicious as far as whether this is going to be a genuine effort to find a negotiated solution. So our party's biggest fear is that the other Tamil parties, particularly the TNA, because they happen to be the single largest party representing the Northeast, if they go into these negotiations without being careful of laying certain conditions to make sure that these negotiations don't just end up with a legitimizing exercise of the president and Mr. Wickremesinghe himself, then I think we are losing good opportunities to actually move this matter forward in a meaningful way. If we rush in without getting guarantees, I think it's a pretty dangerous thing to do. It'll be a missed opportunity because the government is desperate for legitimacy. There is a lot of leverage that we actually have. The opposition actually has, even though we are in numbers, we are small. There is a need to have us engage with them. I mean, if we rush in, I think the danger is that we will ultimately, it will be a completely win situation for President Wickremesinghe and this government, and it will be a completely lose situation for the opposition and democracy for the country.
Of course, Sri Lanka never fails to miss an opportunity, as history has proven time and time again. On that note, let's go for a quick break, and we'll see you soon on the other side of this break.
News First, Newsline with Faraz Shaukat Ali.
And welcome back to Newsline Zoom. I'm in conversation this evening with Mr. Gajendra Kumar Ponnambalam. And thank you, welcome back. Mr. Ponnambalam, I put it to you that all this, what you've said, and that you are indeed right, that all of this sounds and smells rather fishy, because they want, there is this ulterior motive, or the ulterior purpose really is to show or to paint a rather rosy picture to the IMF and to those in Europe, maybe with the GSP Plus and all sorts of things. But in actual fact, we see a serious non-delivery from President Wickremesinghe, the so-called champion of democracy in Sri Lanka, and acknowledged to be that by the West and our main sort of trading partners. And those three things, as was pointed out on Newsline by a diplomat who arrived on the program, one, of course, is that there has been no legal resolution either way to the central bank, the so-called central bank bond scam. Secondly, we had the strange situation where people came out of Temple Trees, one of the most guarded and fortified locations in the country, and seriously, they came out with poles and wooden poles and all sorts of weaponry, and attacked the peaceful protesters in Gulf Face and so on, and nothing has been done about that. There are no charges. It's just nothing. And then, of course, there is this other serious matter, which the international community will most certainly be looking at, and that is, of course, about the Easter bombings. 255 people lost their lives. Hundreds of others were sort of injured, and life-changing events took place for scores of families all around these areas where the bombings took place. But there was also the question that several foreigners were killed in those attacks. And the government of Sri Lanka, led by this so-called champion of democracy, hasn't done anything about it. Where are the charges? And surely the international community will be looking at answers to this very serious problem.
Well, I mean, ideally, yes, for us. I mean, here's, I mean, if I be very blunt and frank, I mean, the international community has obviously they have vested interests. They have certain expectations with regards to Sri Lanka, and whilst to at a sort of at a superficial level, the notions of democracy, rule of law, good governance, and all of these values are things that will certainly have a part to play with regards to their dealings with Sri Lanka and how they see the Sri Lankan state. There are deeper issues I'm sure you're aware of. I mean, geopolitical considerations that unfortunately take precedence. So when you have someone like Mr. Wickremesinghe, who has been who has positioned himself as someone who has been always quite friendly with Western countries and who's been quite been willing to consider India's interests in the region. He has a reputation of being responsible with those regards, whereas the Rajapaksas have been the complete opposite. One wonders whether these countries, the West, India, might actually be willing to turn a blind eye. And here's the concern, because if those geopolitical considerations are going to override, then obviously they'll just simply pay lip service for those very important issues as far as citizens are concerned. Those of us who are in this country and who actually genuinely do want those values upheld, whether it's just going to be a question of lip service. So I mean, I have my doubts. I think there is not much pressure being brought in, and also particularly Western countries will have this consideration of whether Sri Lanka is going down the path of becoming a failed state. A lot of it looks that way. The fear with regards to even these protests, if it goes beyond a certain point, I think their concerns will be, well, if there is economic instability, which is one of the main sort of drivers behind these protests, because the people's economy has been completely destroyed by these so-called leaders, right? Mm. So ultimately, whether that will lead to a situation where there'll be anarchy, where the rule of law in a very real sense, where the sort of people's sort of faith in the system completely gets smashed, and they want a complete sort of overhaul. Whether that time frame, that gap, can result in a failed state scenario that will destabilize state structures to such an extent that one sort of is not too sure about how things will unfold. Those are the sort of situations where I think these countries will be quite worried about, because, they are competitors in a geopolitical platform who don't put the sort of values like good governance, democracy, and all of that in the same way, might find that advantageous, right? So here's the problem. Whilst they might technically be the countries that actually do put emphasis on those values that we also want, in reality, I think they'll be also very, very worried with regards to what might happen if the government and the economy is allowed to fail, if they don't in some way intervene and try to stabilize. So it's a huge sort of struggle within a struggle for the ordinary citizens who want a genuine change, who want a system change, who want a genuine change where people don't get cheated anymore. You would think that they could find partners amongst the international community who share those same values, who at least pay sort of lip service officially to those values. But whether in fact they do, I think is a moot point. So at the end of the day, I think as citizens of the country, I think it's important that the people take a stand. Everything else must follow. I'm not someone who believes that we should look for international partners first and see whether you have someone who will back us in some way with regards to what you want to achieve. I think if something is required, then you have to take the steps to achieve it. You must not start thinking whether that is achievable or not. If you need it, then you have to go for it. I think that's the only way you can bring some sort of seriousness into this government trying to address the various concerns that the people have been trying to bring up in a much more calm, meaningful way, but is not being taken seriously at all.
We've got about 3 minutes to finish, but let me ask you this question, hypothetical as it may be, but with your experience and being in where you are in Parliament and with an all-round knowledge of what's going on, what chances for a lasting, workable, and sustainable peace in Sri Lanka in the next 10 years?
Well, I think especially after the Aragalaya and the way in which the ordinary Sinhalese people reacted to a government that they themselves elected in unprecedented numbers just 2 years ago. For me, that was an eye-opener. I have been cynical. I have been someone who's just more or less written off the average people in that it seemed like they were just repeatedly voting in without thinking deeply. But I think the economic crisis has just basically opened the eyes of a lot of people who were not prepared to open before. So in that sense, I think the questions, the suspicions with regards to their leaders, I think still is there. And that to me is a great plus, because the sort of the complaint that we had was that the ordinary people were not questioning the leadership of their leaders. So from people like us who come from the Northeast, from a different sort of mandate that we get, to see the people in the South actually question their leadership, question the sort of policies that were put in place, even though at the moment it is just limited to the economic policies and the way the corruption and all of that. The fact that they're questioning, we hope that at some point will lead to the other main issues that, say, the minorities have also being brought in. So as far as I'm concerned, for as long as the struggle is on, I think there is a possibility that a meaningful solution can in fact be worked out. But if we are going to just simply accept the present the incumbent as a fact and then go back the way we used to be, say 2 years ago, then of course I think Sri Lanka is going to struggle.
Mr. Ponnambalam, thank you very much for being on Newsline Zoom. We much appreciate your time. Thank you, and that's the way it was on Newsline Zoom this evening. Take care, and as always, God bless you all.